Hi everybody, it's Cookie Lou in Arizona again. I'm just swinging by to do another brief video. I had just seen Rosemary's video, her tag video about the 15 things you don't know about me. Never done a tag before, so I thought I'd try this one. Okay, I wrote down a few things, so I'm going to be looking to the side a little bit to read my 15 things you don't know about me. Number one, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, in case you couldn't tell. That old saying goes, you can take the girl out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out of the girl. So I'm a Brooklyn girl. Number two, my mother left my father when I was 2 years old in 1948. Women didn't leave their husbands very often, but my mother was a pioneer. In that situation, she decided, due to the fact that my father was an abusive man and he was beating on her, it was time to leave. So we went to her parents' home in Brooklyn, and I lived there with my mother for 8 years before she could afford to get her own place for us, which was a big, I don't know, 100 feet around the corner. we found an apartment in my mother's friend's basement, and we were there for a while. My grandfather was in construction, so he came down there into the basement, and he framed out some walls and made a closet for my mother and separated some space in the basement so that we had a bedroom, living room, closet combo. And then I remember a few steps up there was a kitchen, and then a little bit to the left of that apartment there was a boiler room, and off to the boiler room there was a bathroom with no sink, just a bowl and a shower. So I used to brush my teeth and wash my hair and wash up in the kitchen sink. And then a few more steps up from that was the entrance. So it was kind of like a 3-level apartment. But I love that apartment because as soon as you walked in, to the right there was this room, probably was a storage bin or something, but it had 2 windows in it, and it was a cubicle type area, and my mother made a little play space for me, and there was a desk and a bookshelf, and that's where I would go and sit at the desk and do my homework and play and read books and things. And it was a cozy place. It looked like a little dollhouse with different compartments, and that was our first home for just me and my mother. And we were there for a while, and then moved, and we had several apartments that we shared together before I got married over the course of the next, I don't know, 12 years or so. Number 3, I did live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my mom for about 6 months. She decided to try Milwaukee for a change of pace, and we did live with my grandmother's sister, Aunt Angela, and her family. They had this huge house in Milwaukee, and I went to school there, 4th grade, 6 months, and then we decided to go back to New York. But it was interesting living in Milwaukee and going to school there, and that's where I first became a brownie. I was a brownie for a few months, and then we moved back. Number 4, I graduated high school at 16 years old. I was skipped. I was in Catholic school for a while in Brooklyn, and then they kind of skipped me. So I think I was skipped by a grade, and I was so that made me graduate high school at 16. I also had my first date at 16 years old. My mother had to practically kick me out the door because I was a very shy person, and I really didn't want to go out on a date. She said, "You're 16, go out on a date." And this college fellow asked me out on a date, and I said yes. I don't know why. Then I chickened out. I said, "I don't want to go." She said, "Oh, you're going to go." So when the doorbell rang and he came to get me, I panicked. "I don't want to go, Ma." But she made me go. And I got my first kiss that night. So it was well worth it. Well worth going. Number 5, my first true love happened when I was about 18. I went steady with this very handsome guy for about 6 months. And I met his whole family, and they all loved me, and they all thought that I was going to be, Mrs. Calabro, even though I was only 18. They knew that, oh, she's perfect for the family. We love her. And I don't know. I really thought that I'd marry Pete. I really did. I was so in love, and but then I realized that he was a cheater. And when I found out that he was cheating on me, I dumped him. And it was a good thing I did, because it turned out about 15 years later, I found out I was in Brooklyn visiting some family and friends, and I found out that he was a policeman. He was actually a detective in Queens, and I found out that he was killed by a very well-known hitman in New Jersey. Turned out that Pete was a crooked cop. He was involved with the mob. He was under suspicion for murdering his first wife. And either the family of his first wife or the mob rubbed him out. That was a shocker, to know that you were in love with somebody and was thinking of marrying somebody that actually got murdered. Didn't turn out to be such a good guy. Never know people. Number 6, I was married when I was 20, and I had my first son 2 days after my first anniversary. So I spent my first anniversary in the maternity ward. Didn't plan on it, but that's the way it happened. 3.5 years later, I had my second son, Michael. And let's see, number 6. No, let's go to number 7. Number 7. I think I'm still tired from my hospitalization. Number 7, I was married for 24 years when I chose to divorce my husband. We had just grown too far apart to warrant staying together anymore. And he was a very good man, a very hardworking man, but he was also a very depressed man. And he loved to drink his beer. And he was alcoholic. And after all those years dealing with it, I decided I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I left. Number 8, I like to wear wigs. This is a wig, actually, right now. I wear wigs occasionally for convenience purposes. I don't like to fuss with hair. This is an old wig and it doesn't look that great anymore. But I don't like to fuss with hair. I hate sleeping in rollers, and my hair never holds a curl, so sometimes it's just easier to throw on a wig. So I have this wig, and I have a red one, and I have a blonde wig. So when you see me as a blondie, you know it's a wig. And it's nice to change up the style. Number 9, I am a very knowledgeable person, and I studied about a lot of different things, which allows me to hold a conversation easily with just about anybody. Number 10, my grandfather, my mother's father, was a construction worker all his life. He was a cement mason, and he was one of the construction workers who worked on the Rockefeller Center Plaza in New York City. In 1937, he was standing around a fire barrel with a bunch of the guys trying to get warm. It was December, and my grandfather's birthday is December 24th. He's Christmas baby, and he was standing around the fire with the guys, and they're trying to get warm, and he said, you know what do we need in this place? We need a Christmas tree. So they all thought it was a good idea, and they all chipped in, and they got a huge Christmas tree erected at the Rockefeller Center Plaza. Actually, it was just a hole in the ground. They just finished blasting, and all the workers decided to make a garland for the tree, and they took the blasting caps from the silver paper from the blasting caps, and they all twisted it, and they made a garland out of it. And this was a huge tree. It had to be 20 feet, and they just kind of threw this garland around the tree. And that was the first Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. And every year since then, I remember growing up and being at the table with Grandpa, and we'd be watching TV in the basement kitchen that we had in the Brooklyn house. And we would see the tree lighting ceremony at Rockefeller Center, and he always used to say to me, Cookie, that was my invention. I says, what was your invention? That Christmas tree over there, that was my idea. I used to say, okay, Grandpa. And then I found out from my uncle who worked with him, my Uncle Armando and my Uncle Herbie, and the rest of my mother's siblings that I grew up around. That was true. That was really true. That was Grandpa's idea. So my grandfather was the person responsible for the tree at Rockefeller Center, the Christmas tree. And that was a little famous moment in the family. Okay, number 11. I'm an avid reader, and I especially love novels and biographies. I love to read. Number 12. I'm a terrible speller, and I thank God for spell check on the computer because I can't spell for crap. And but despite that fact that I'm not a good speller, and it didn't really help me that much. Spell check didn't help me that much in my next adventure because let me see, what do I have up here? Let me see here. Despite the fact that I'm a terrible speller, I did mention this before a time or two, but there are some of you who don't know that in spite of the fact that I'm a lousy speller, and spell check didn't help me all that much in trying to edit, but needless to say, I wrote my own book. This is a book that I wrote about my family. It's called Family of Pearls, and I have it under my maiden name, Lucille Albino. And this is my proudest moment right here, was this book that I wrote, Family of Pearls. That's my grandmother and grandfather on the cover, and I wrote a book, which was very well received, and it was selected by Barnes & Noble for their local author showcase in 2009. And I actually did a book signing at Barnes & Noble. So that was a fun day. Okay, so I wrote a book. Number 13, I am a very intuitive person, and I studied psychology and psychic development for a couple of years. There's a very good friend of mine here in the Valley that is a very well-known psychic, and I went to her for years for reading, and she told me, no, Lucille, you're very psychic, and so is your son, and so is your mother. And she says, you should develop your intuitiveness, because it really helps you with your self-awareness and the real awareness of your surroundings when you just kind of boost up that intuitiveness that we all have inside us and seldom use. So I did study with her, and I did find it very rewarding in certain areas of my life. And I found myself able to help others because she told me that I had a medical intuitiveness and that I could not heal people, but I could feel illnesses with my hands around people. And I did. I won't go into it, but I did. Okay, number 14, I have a certificate in life coaching, and I do intend to start using it. I keep saying it, and I'm not doing it because things keep coming up in my life that keep knocking me back a few steps. And I do want to start using my life coaching certificate to kind of help people in relationships. Number 15. Did I do them all? Number 1, born in Brooklyn. Number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think we're up to number 15. Well, anyway, this is probably one that's going to be a little bit of a surprise to people. My mother's brother Carlo was a famous person of sorts, and I have written about this in my book as well. But his name is Carlo Muscarello. Muscarello. Carl or Carlo Muscarello. And if you'd like to know more about my uncle and kind of read up about what I'm about to say about him, you can. Just Google Carlo Muscarello and you'll find out that my Uncle Carlo is this guy. This is my Uncle Carl, and he was the kissing sailor. There's a reflection here. Can you see? That's my Uncle Carl. It's the kissing sailor. Actually, when Michael Carl, when I was born, he was on a submarine tender in the South Pacific when I was born in 1946, and he is my grandfather, not my grandfather, my godfather via proxy. My Uncle Armando was actually the one that stood at the church with me in his arms, and but Carlo was considered my godfather, is my godfather. All my uncles were in the war. My Uncle Carl was the sailor, and this was his claim to fame right there. And my Uncle Armando was in the Korean War. He was a infantry soldier, and he was involved in hand-to-hand combat. And if anybody should have gotten a reward in the newspaper, it was Uncle Armando. But Uncle Carlo kisses a nurse, and he gets fame for years. For the rest of his life, he's a famous guy. So anyway, that is Uncle Carlo. And that's about it. I'm pooped. I probably took far too long to do this, but anyway, that's my 15 things you don't know about me. Bye.